All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Think of this as your ultimate playbook for demystifying cross-border heavy machinery procurement. Look, if you're a global B2B buyer, a fleet manager, or honestly just someone who geeks out over heavy engineering, you already know that buying commercial vehicles internationally, it is definitely not like ordering a toaster online. Today, we're zeroing in on sourcing tow trucks specifically in China. We're going to break down the technical specs, the hidden dangers you've got to watch out for, and the logistics of actually getting these massive machines off the factory floor and onto your local highway.
Now, sourcing tow trucks in China gives you access to a supply chain that is both vast and highly customizable. But, and this is a massive catch, evaluating different factories and navigating those highly technical specifications across borders is incredibly challenging. The stakes literally couldn't be higher here. If you get it wrong, you aren't just out a bit of cash. You're stuck with a multi-ton piece of machinery that could actually fail on the highway.
So, to help us navigate this, we've got a clear 4-step roadmap for today's explainer. First, choosing your wrecker type. Second, selecting the right chassis. Third, evaluating those hidden hydraulic systems. And finally, global sourcing and logistics. Let's dive in.
Starting off with Section 1, choosing your wrecker type. We're talking everything from 3-ton flatbeds all the way up to 70-ton rotators.
Before you even think about ordering a truck, you have to answer the most fundamental question. What exactly are you trying to lift? It's crucial to understand the absolute extremes of structural engineering we're dealing with here. On one end, you've got light-duty flatbed wreckers. You know, your standard rollback tow trucks. These handle typical 3 to 5-ton capacities, mostly passenger cars. When you're sourcing these, experts heavily recommend prioritizing 3 to 5 millimeter patterned anti-slip steel plates for the deck, just to keep that cargo perfectly stable. But then, jump over to the other extreme and you're looking at rotator tow trucks. These are the absolute monsters of the road, handling anywhere from 30 to 70 tons. They feature this incredible 360-degree rotating crane boom, which is designed to recover heavy equipment from deep ditches or lift right over highway barriers, and they do it all without even needing to reposition the truck itself. Pretty wild, right?
So, matching the equipment to your exact B2B application is absolutely critical. Beyond the flatbeds and rotators we just talked about, you also got to consider the wheel lift. These use a metal yoke and hydraulic cylinders to lift the drive wheels. They're super compact, which makes them perfect for that 2 to 5-ton capacity range in narrow urban areas. Think parking enforcement. And then you have the integrated wreckers. These guys combine a heavy boom and an underlift system into one cohesive unit, giving you about 15 to 50 tons of capacity for things like commercial buses and heavy trucks. You literally have to lock in your required vehicle type first, because the structural materials and the engineering itself change drastically based on that one choice. Moving right along to Section 2, selecting the right chassis, or building the foundation.
Building the foundation of the truck is where so many buyers actually make their most expensive mistake. Honestly, a mismatched chassis is the #1 reason for wrecker failure. You have to make sure your axle configuration perfectly aligns with the wrecker body's lifting capacity, because that choice, it dictates your gross vehicle weight, your engine torque, and your towing stability. So, step 1, if you're running a light-duty flatbed on paved city streets, a 4x2 chassis is your go-to. Step 2, if you're stepping up to a medium to heavy-duty integrated wrecker, you need a 6x4 chassis. That gives you the high rear axle load capacity you need for the underlift. And step 3, if you're operating a heavy-duty rotator, you absolutely require an 8x4 chassis to support those massive payload weights and keep everything stable during crane operations.
But hey, let me pose a quick scenario for you. What actually happens when you lift a heavy commercial bus using a rear underlift? I mean, it sounds straightforward enough, right? Well, the physics involved are actually incredibly dangerous if you haven't sourced your truck properly.
It all comes down to something called the front axle leverage effect. When an integrated wrecker lifts that massive bus from the rear, the leverage creates this huge upward force on the front wheels of the tow truck. If you don't account for this, your tow truck will basically try to pop a wheelie right there on the highway, and you completely lose steering control. No way around it, that's a disaster. So the crucial takeaway here is that buyers absolutely must specify heavy-duty front axles. And even more importantly, you need to request OEM front counterweights directly from the chassis manufacturer during the sourcing process. You can't just slap some weights on after the fact. It has to be engineered right there at the factory level.
All right, on to Section 3, evaluating hidden hydraulic systems and the micro dangers inside.
When you're comparing technical quotes from different Chinese manufacturers, you absolutely cannot just look at the base price. The real micro dangers?
They're hiding right there in the hydraulic and mechanical systems. So let's run through a quick hydraulic safety checklist. First up, multi-stage hydraulic cylinders must include balance valves. Why? Well, if a hydraulic hose suddenly fails, that balance valve is what prevents the heavy boom from just dropping right out of the sky. It is a completely non-negotiable safety feature. Second, while light flatbeds can get away with single winches, heavy-duty wreckers absolutely require dual hydraulic winches to balance out the pulling force during those complex accident recoveries. Oh, and always verify that those winch ratings actually match the boom capacity they're quoting you.
Now, you also need to know there's a massive difference when it comes to hydraulic valves. On one hand, you have cheap on-off valves. These are notorious for causing sudden, violent jerks when you're lifting a load. That can literally snap your winch cables or cause a suspended vehicle to swing around dangerously. On the other hand, you have what you really should be specifying: proportional control valves. These let the operator move the boom and winches smoothly and gradually, kind of like a highly controlled elevator. Yeah, it's a slightly higher upfront cost, but it absolutely saves lives and protects equipment on the job. Which brings us to a real golden rule regarding the power takeoff, or the PTO. The PTO is what actually transfers the engine's power to the hydraulic pump. If that PTO is poorly matched with the chassis transmission, your shiny new pump is simply going to fail to generate enough pressure to lift heavy vehicles. That is exactly why it is critical, and I mean critical, that the manufacturer test the PTO under fully loaded conditions before it ever gets exported. If they only test it empty, you're going to be in for a really nasty surprise the first time you try to lift a heavy load.
Finally, Section 4, Global Sourcing and Logistics, bringing it all home.
Okay, so you've spec'd out the perfect wrecker body, matched up the chassis, and secured top-tier hydraulics. Awesome. But how do platforms like CNS Special Vehicle actually get these massive, customized machines out of China and integrated seamlessly into your fleet? Look, finding a factory online is the easy part. Ensuring that vehicle actually meets your local compliance, that's where you need serious expertise. You have to navigate a whole maze of regulations before production even begins. We're talking verifying local towing connection regulations, like ISO 8353. You've got to match local emission standards. Are you operating in a Euro V or Euro 6 zone? You need to make absolutely sure the drive orientation is correct for your country, whether that's left-hand or right-hand drive. And on top of all that, someone actually has to be on the ground to verify the pre-delivery inspections.
Now, what if you have very specific component requirements? Well, the Chinese supply chain is incredibly flexible. If you're running heavy-duty operations, you might strongly prefer imported hydraulic components. The good news is, Chinese manufacturers can seamlessly integrate imported parts, like those highly rated Italian or German proportional valves and pumps we talked about, directly into the wrecker body right there at the factory. So you basically get the incredible scale of Chinese manufacturing combined with the specific, localized performance parts that your fleet already trusts.
And then there's shipping. The sheer physics of moving these machines creates this really fascinating logistical choice, based purely on scale. If you're sourcing massive integrated and rotator tow trucks, they have to be shipped whole via RoRo. That stands for roll-on/roll-off vessels, or on bulk cargo ships. But if you're just buying light-duty flatbed bodies, those can actually be engineered to ship inside standard high-cube containers. You just bolt them to your local chassis later on, which, by the way, can drastically reduce your shipping costs.
So that brings us to our final thought. Sourcing a tow truck in China clearly offers endless customization and immense value. But as we've seen today with things like leverage effects, proportional valves, and ISO compliance, are you really equipped to navigate all those technical specs entirely on your own? Or will you let the experts at platforms like CNS Special Vehicle bridge that gap for you? Engaging experts for technical consultation, B2B sourcing, and global shipping isn't just a convenience, it is absolutely the key to a flawless procurement journey. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you're walking away with a solid foundation for your next major fleet acquisition.